One thing I've learned, if you don't hold their feet to the fire, everybody gets burned.
Hold on. Before you start waving around that freedom of speech thing, when you're in a crowded movie theater and you scream fire, you better be able to smell smoke. If you come on this radio show and you start saying incandescent things like that, you better have more behind you, pal, than just your thumb. I've been listening to talk radio for years, and one thing I just can't stand is when the host has to, push his way onto people, beat the callers into his way of thinking and extending his ego, or when the callers call in and say something so outrageous and the host lets it go unchallenged. The sign you're on the road to truth is the lack of contradiction. You want to find truth, you just don't simply believe somebody because of their authority or their degree, or you listen to what they say, you test it against reality, and you hold their feet to the fire. All right, we are back and live today. Just doing audio. I'm going to be reading stuff, and I think that would be real exciting if I did that one live video. But as you might have noticed, I'm not in, to watch myself in the video while I talk. So here we are. Now, it's not a laughing matter what I want to talk about. It's this COVID-19 virus. I've been watching this stuff, and I've been watching the analysis of it. And what happens to me is I hear stuff or read it, and I got a little thing inside me that, I guess a talent and or curse. It was a curse in school when I would find problems and with the teachers and ways to get around their assignments and things. But I kind of get a hankering of what's missing. It's kind of like a BS meter, but it's not just about lying. It's about something missing, or I've used the kept it obvious several times. So some things seemed obvious to me that were not being dealt with, and so I said, what about this? This is pretty obvious. And over the years, I've learned that sometimes when things are obvious to me are not to others, and vice versa. So that's why we all have a teamwork here. We all work together and share the information and commentary on it, and we can come up with a better view on it. Now, one of the problems I'm seeing with this COVID-19, I guess is the official name now, is it starts back in my youth to the swine flu days. The swine flu came out, big hoopla, oh my gosh, people are going to die. We need to have these vaccines. And they were giving them out. I mean, a lot of times giving them out. I mean, the government's paying for it. Somebody's paying the people who made it. And what ended up happening is they stopped giving it out. Now, I remember this myself going through it. I did not get the illness. But they stopped giving out the vaccines because people who got the vaccines had a higher infection rate than people just wandering about. And ended up running away. And since then, you've had other things, SARS and whatnot. You've had these fears of pandemics that has been blown up in the media. And things like, killing civilians when we bomb other countries for regime change, that gets downplayed. There's deaths there. The death and maiming of our soldiers who go to do these politically based things, that's downplayed. Obama, if I recall properly, I remember saying that he forbade videos of the people coming back and so forth, because, we'd get people, maybe you get a little upset that we're sending people to go out and get killed. And not to mention the killing that's being done as well. So there's this contradiction in, oh my gosh, we have to protect everybody from these diseases. Oh, at the same breath, let's kill children up to the time they're born in abortion. Let's give them dangerous drugs to change genders when they're not even in puberty yet, and there's all these conflicting things that are based on programming, social programming. It's okay to do things dangerous or whatnot if there's a social program. Trying to come up with an adjective there, a social programming goal that can be reached. So whenever I see these things like this, after years, I mean, again, when you live for a while, you start to see things over and over again in patterns and whatnot. And so when I see the outbreak of the virus, immediately I go back to what is the ulterior motives to it, or perhaps not to say that the virus was released with a motive, but as Rahm Emanuel once said, a former mayor of Chicago and chief of staff of Barack Obama, never let a catastrophe or go unused. Tragedy. Never let a tragedy go unused. So I start thinking along those lines when I see these things. I start looking. It's like there's for people who are truck drivers or people who drive a lot on the road. When you see a deer coming across the highway, you don't watch the deer. You immediately go to whatever direction it came from to see who's following, because you can end up hitting the next deer while focusing on the deer that's crossing. So the one that gets across first, you're not going to hit it. You look for the next one. Slow down, look for the next one. So when I see these things coming, those are my kind of reactions. I start to think about, well, what could this mean? What could it do? What are some of the ulterior motives? I don't mean that. What are some of the side effects or things that can be brought into play to take advantage of it? And that's how I've been kind of watching this, along with the straight-up data. And I also know from doing years and years of this radio and in years of listening to Art Bell before it, that when these things come out, there's a salaciousness to right away go, oh my gosh, we're going to have Stephen King Stand is going to happen, or a Andromeda strain, or whatever. We're going to have these pandemics. Look what happened at the Black Plague, and look what happened. And it's in the analysis of the disease is showing that it has some type of human interference or design with it or modification with it. So then, it's being released, and you start to think about it. So I started thinking about all these areas, and I just want to share my thoughts, just for the heck of it, on these various topics. Now, first I want to talk about the idea of it being human constructed and patents and whatever. Coronavirus is a type of a virus, and there are many of them. And so patents on the coronavirus does not mean this one is patented. It could mean that this is a aberrant of some patented one. It could mean that it is patented for whatever, a biological, let's say it's a biological weapon they're working on, and it got out of Wuhan, China. So it doesn't mean that it was purposely made and put out like The Stand, Stephen King's The Stand, which I happen to go back and watch the first couple hours because of this. It got out by accident, and, in the case of China, it got out in China. Apparently there's a bioweapons factory, a research facility in that area. It got out, and now they're reaping the instant karma of doing that kind of thing on their own country at this point. There also could be, and I've not heard this one yet, that this was a CIA operation, and this was a Western-created drug. CIA released it in the area where they do have a weapons factory from China, and that it covers, the way it looks is that theirs got out. Now, I haven't heard that one. I thought that might, pop. Again, I'm not all everywhere. I don't hear everything everywhere, so I don't have access to everything that's ever been said. But these are some of the things that I'm talking about. But a lot of this stuff is kind of irrelevant. All right, let's just say, just pick one. Let's say it got away from the Chinese biofactory. Call it karma or not, or accident or whatever. So that's right. So it doesn't. All right, let's go with that because it doesn't really matter. One has to look at, and the numbers that are being used are the transmission rate, the incubation period, people coming out of the country. How long will it live on a inanimate object like will it live in clothes? Will it live in a shipping container? How long if somebody actually shows symptoms to be quarantined, and how many people will get it in the meantime, and how effective is it? Those are all good questions. Don't get me wrong; those are all really important things. And we'll go through some of those. I found a nice website that actually has correlated a lot of information, and I will put the link. I put the link up on Facebook when I posted this, but I will put the link up afterwards in the information on the bottom. I will read it out to you so somebody can go there now when I get to it. And so I looked at a lot of the data from this. I also looked up it historically. I looked up SARS, MERS, and bubonic plague, which killed, a huge portion of the planet at the time, a significant, let's say, portion of the planet. I looked at all these things and started comparing them, and we'll get into that. The main thing that's missing from this, there's twofolds, and I'll get to that after that. The twofold things are missing are as the geographical, political, the access to modern medicine, the reaction, the political government reaction on sealing people in buildings. Did they bother to throw a vial of antibiotics in with them, or did you just close the door so that they can all give it to each other and die? I mean, this type of approach is not being addressed in terms of having it come into the West. It's just assuming, looking at those numbers, it could be, well, I'll get to it in a minute, but it could be carried here. Well, a lot of people are going to die from it, and we have to quarantine. And what's going to be the criteria for making any kind of a vaccine? Will there be side effects? Will it be willy-nilly? Will it be quickly thrown together? Will there be side effects? Will they take advantage of, you could get into it, chipping or whatever else comes along with it. Those are all things that you can look at. But in the quarantine, how do we notice it won't be used to some kind of advantage? But I'll get into those things as we go along. But I want to talk about the virus. The website that I liked, it's called worldometers.info. It would be the word world, the letter O, and meters, all one word, .info, and then /coronavirus, one word, CORONAVIRUS. And that comes up with all kinds of data on there, and it's updated. I don't know, it's at least daily, because the updates that I'm seeing on there are from today. And it correlates it from many different areas. And you can research their research. You can see where they're getting it from, which is nice. You can see where it's coming from. And there's a lot of things that mention, there's old data. This was an assumption here. They're pretty, at least they look pretty good to me. And the latest account, according to this, it does have the date. February 16th, today at 2300 Greenwich Mean Time. So the corona cases total worldwide, 71,231. Deaths up to this point, these are all, of course, these numbers are based on data. It doesn't mean it's absolute. Inclusive, there could be a margin of error up and down, but deaths are 1,770. Recovered 10,890 at this point. At this point they're looking at the breakdown. Active cases 58,000. I'm just going to round it. 58,005. Mild condition 47,002. Serious or critical condition, 11,002. In the closed cases, that is, people who've either died or got better, 12,666 is the current number. 10,008 got better, 86%. 17, as I read, 1770, 14% died. So in that number, what is not being talked about is the fact that it's in an area of a totalitarian, reactionary, let's lie, let's hide it. Of course, I guess that goes for any government. If you want to look at history in the United States, see some fun stuff. And their reaction to it is to push it down. We've seen videos of them putting back front loaders full of earth in front of doors to keep people in. Of course, I don't know if you can go out of windows. There's been talk about people who have been shot when I guess it was North Korea. Somebody got out and they got shot. I mean, all these type of stories where you're not getting. How many of these people are getting treated by antibiotics? What percentage? If it's 0% or like 1% of the people are getting treated, well, you're going to have an increased death rate just because there's no medicine on it or it's limited medicine. You're going to have that. If there's closeness quarters, sanitation, all these things raise huge the infection rate, then the reaction and of course the death rate. So as this is increasing over the days, there's a scale. If you're on that page, you can scroll down it. I was going to do a video on this, but I'm going to be bouncing around, and it probably would just be. But if you look down, you can see that there is a rise in cases. There is a parabolic rise in the cases, which would show that the amount is going up faster. If it was a straight line or a slow slope, But again, when you break down the countries, 70,400 cases are China. Or as Trump would say, China. Out of a total case of 71,000 people, 70,000 are in China. Okay, so that tells you, it's when you look at the Japan 414, Singapore 75, Hong Kong 57. As we go down to the UK 9, USA 15, and we get down to Egypt 1, And as you look at the death rate, total deaths 1765, all in China. Japan 1, Hong Kong 1, Taiwan 1, France 1, Philippines 1, and that's it for the world. Total amount recovered in China is 10,000. And as you look at the other ones, for example, in Australia, there's been 15 cases, 10 recovered. There's no deaths, so it looks like there's still 5 sick, according to this. So these numbers are devastating for China, or in particular, the closer you get to the epicenter, devastating numbers. You could see where people would get upset, nervous there, going with the traditional mask to try and stop the spread of it, and so on. So when you look at the actual numbers, yeah, it's not. There's 11,002 critically serious currently in China of the group. So again, you minus 11,000, but at 70, I mean 60,000 are not critical. So obviously it's not good, and I remember in the early days of this coming out, the guys were coming on, the pundits were coming on the news shows saying that, they're coming on to talk to them about the coronavirus. So they're going to talk about it. Then they say, but by the way, there's more people right now in America alone who having the standard flu dwarfs the number of people who are having it, at the time. And coincidentally, the way you protect yourself from this disease is the same way you would protect yourself from a flu or a cold. You avoid contact. You can use those wipes. Of course, too much of that can cause trouble too with your own body stuff. But there's common sense items to stop from doing it. And when you're exposed to somebody, doesn't mean you will get it. if you have contact, especially like, sneezing is inhaled or whatever, you raise a lot. But then your own immune system is there to take it on. And if you're not immune challenged, you've had cancer treatment, your immune system's down, or various diseases, you're elderly with very bad lungs, or all those things, or you're a child, newborn, doesn't have a lot of things. All those raise the ante about getting infected and getting serious. But that alone, reading this stuff alone, realizes that a lot of people are panicking about this. It makes great radio, great talk shows. There's people who have webcasts of it that are monetized, benefiting from it. People want to know about it, so they're going to tune in and listen, and a lot of that's going on. Now, getting to another idea, fatality rate. This is an estimate number. It says 2%. I'm just going to say it's 3% for the hell of it, so not to split hairs. The transmission rate range. This was pretty interesting. Let me go to this area. Oops, did I just close it? I just closed it. That's funny. I get the fatality rate. I'm going to get to transmission rate. Now, there's, if you look at the data, you have extreme ranges. You have WHO's estimate at January 23rd, which is a little out of date, between 1.5 and 2.5. You have other people saying 3.6 to 4, others saying 2.5 to 3.58. Primary studies have had it between 1.5 to 3. Anything below 1 will gradually disappear with no harm. So it's a little bit above that aspect. And so for comparison, the RO, which is how they R0 or R0 is the phrase for the contagious rating. The common flu is 1.3. All right, so, okay. The lower end of the scale is in the regular flu range. And SARS was 2. So it's somewhere between, it's above the regular flu, and it could be above the SARS, which did come in and go out. The fatality rate is 2, some have estimated 3. For comparisons, the fatality rate for SARS was 10%, and the fatality rate for MERS was 34%. 1 in 3 died from MERS if you got it. Now, again, you have to keep in mind everything I say, you got to go back to the geographic, geopolitical access to antibiotics and all that. That is a big if. That's the big cloud hanging over us. How are they taking care of it? Are they just closing doors, or are they sending out gobs of medicine, which, they produce gobs of it in China. They should have all kinds of it there. There should be like a spigot sending it out. So incubation period, how long it takes symptoms to cure. This is something that's interesting because the longer that you are infected and thus transmittable of disease without knowing you have it or anybody around you, that number, the higher number that is, the more significant that gets. That can mean more people have the possibility of getting the disease. The symptoms for this coronavirus we're talking about, the old name was 2019 nCoV, but they changed it to, what is it? I forgot. I read it already and I forgot the name of it. COVID-19, I think it is. Incubation period is as little as 2 days or as long as 14. Estimated ranges between 2 to 10 days, 2 to 14, and 10 to 14. These are the various on it. So you can show symptoms in 2 days or as long as, say, 10 to 14 days. I guess 14 days is on the is more rare aspect of it. So that means you can be walking around, and if you are having contact with people or you're sneezing and they're breathing it in, you could be spreading the disease. That's significant. So that means if you're leaving you waited a few days and you're leaving the area and you go, oh, I'm seeming to be pretty good. It's been 5, 6, 7 days. I'm fine. You leave, and then all of a sudden you start developing symptoms later on. Or somebody develops symptoms and thinks it's just a cold because the symptoms are the same. It's just a cold. So that's significant. But again, it's how your body is set up right now is going to be the big way it looks. Are you in good immunological? Is your immune system doing good? Is it healthy? And you can help yourself now in these regular flu period. And winter is known for getting people their immune system going down. You can boost it by taking various supplements. I take a thing called a wellness pill from Source Natural. It's got everything in it. Source Natural. It's got everything in it. So you can take those. They're horse pills, but you can take them and boost for a short time. Vitamin C. We just actually treated some cats had some sniffles out there, runny nose and sniffles. We read online vitamin C for cats. Put it in their bowl. Cat's doing good. So you can enhance yourself. And the people who have, if you're taking some kind of treatment that lowers your immune system, well, now you have to be careful because your immune system won't be able to fight this thing. What are the age? 71% of the cases were male. Now, does that mean a male is more apt to succumb to the virus, or is it perhaps more males are out and about in work or activities in that particular environment with that particular culture, and therefore are more actively out to get it? You have to look at, when you see the statistics, you have to look at why. And it's going to be based on a culture / habit. How do things work there? So there's a study of 138 hospitalization patients found the median of age was 56. Now, the median age is funny because you have the range from the lowest to youngest. Like, for example, the range is 22 to 92 years old. So the mean age is 56. Well, that doesn't tell you much. So it's going to, but through looking at the way it's like a flu, you look back and see what do flus tend to hit. They had people who are older or have bad immune systems or younger. This is the same applies here. So by being aware of this, unlike the people on ground zero of this disease, they weren't aware of it. And now it's all over the place and being transferred, and now they're being, thrown indoors and locked in and so forth. And it's not funny. I'm laughing at it. I'm kind of chuckling at it because it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So, these are important. Some comparisons. Every year, an estimated 290 to 650,000 people die in the world due to complications from seasonal influenza. This figure corresponds to 795 to 1,700 deaths per day during this flu season. So right off the bat, you see that the seasonal flu has huge numbers that this could meet or surpass, but it doesn't make it apocalyptic in scale. It makes it, that's what happens when people get the flu at this time who don't take, precautions. SARS from November, let's say almost about what would that be, 8 months? It was a coronavirus that originated from Beijing, spread to 29 countries, resulted in a little over 8,000 people with the effect got infected, and 770 deaths. Fatality rate of a little under 10%. Considering that SARS ended up infecting 5,000 people in mainland China, the Wuhan coronavirus surpasses SARS on January 19th, where they had more. It got out more. MRSA in 2012 killed 858, but it had a fatality rate of 34%. You got it, 1 in 3, you're dead. And that's what intervention I included in this. So it's important to know these data, but always keep in the back of your mind, you keep in the back of your mind who gets it and how is it treated. And how are the people in their immune system doing at the top of it. I think I covered a lot of the statistics on this. The people, the rate of death, it takes like 14 to 20 days from when you have it. First symptoms of death, about 14 days. Again, we're talking about 14 to 20 something days, and it has to do with how you're being treated. Now, I looked up. I hope I'm doing this smoothly here because I decided to look up the Black Plague or bubonic plague or Black Death or whatever, because that in history killed. I think I read it. I'll bump into it again. I think it was 25 million people died from it, which is pretty huge. If you get bubonic plague and are not treated by some simple antibiotics that are available, streptomycin being one of them, if you're not treated and you got bubonic plague, it's 30 to 90% die. That, it's huge death rate, easily treated though. Bubonic plague still kills people around the world. It's still here. You can get it. It's from the flea bites. I should say the bacteria on the flea that when they bite you, it goes in you. And people do get it. But if you're treated, and I tried to find the page I originally was looking for, and I just remembered the data. If you're treated by it, there's like 6 to 9% death rate, depending upon how fast you're treated by simple antibiotics. Oh, here it is. Here it is. I tell you, here it is. It's about 10% for infected people who have proper treatment, death risk. Again, it depends how soon it is and the individual's standard health. In 2013, 750 people died in Africa from, cases, 126 deaths in Africa in 2013. Now, this is bubonic plague, still around. And it killed off 25 million people back in the day because they did not have the medicine. And they lived in, this is going back in the dark ages, or I don't know how you want to phrase it. It was commonly, there wasn't clean by today's standards. So you had the environmental factor here blaring through here. And once people got the treatment with simple bacteria, antibiotics, the problem was solved. I mean, and now it's showing up in California in the homeless camps. And what's the deal about that? Well, they have a lot of bad sanitary conditions. They're crapping in the streets. And you have being dirty and spreading disease to one another, eating from garbage and all these things. This is the type of process. Again, environmental conditions that enhance the ability of it. I'm trying to look real quick. There's actually, for those who are interested, there's actually several different types of plagues. They're all very similar, but there are certain types were killed more and whatnot. So that's fine. Now, so the points that I'm trying to get across is the disease itself is not a big deal. It's similar to flu-ish type stuff, and depending upon your immune system, your health condition, your sanitary conditions, how you are treated by medicine when you have it or whatever, all those things are the main factors. So my problem is I'm looking at, so how could the powers that be use this to their advantage on power, especially when you have Brexit going on, you have Trump, doing a dance on the deep state and all this stuff. How can this be used? They want to get him out so bad because they know he'll be elected again. And given enough time and given more support, he'll be able to go through and mow some of these criminals down. So how can we use this? Well, first off, we can sell drugs, of course, and have people come out and get some kind of a vaccine for it. That'll be either worthless, give you the disease, or might help you. And if it's thrown together willy-nilly just to send, there are people who have had bad batches of it. Not that you just get the disease from it, but the actual batch itself causes toxicity. So you have the problem with basic vaccines being mandated. Again, you have to have this. If you work in the health industry, you have to have it. You have no choice but to get all of these flu vaccines every year. And the second thing would be quarantine. And there was an article on, I'll put these up when I add it to their Military Times. Well, if there are people in the chat room, maybe I'll just post in the chat room. That'll be a quick way to do it. So people can go to it. I just thought of that now. I'm going to go into the chat room now and put that original link in as well. The chat room was located in Spreaker, Spreaker.com in the Feet to the Fire area, and I will share this, of course, with YouTube when it is uploaded, and also Bit. Now I can't say the name of it because I'm looking at their logo. Gosh, I don't know if I'm a genius or mentally ill, but BitChute. There we go. I started talking and I got my mind off looking at the logo. I'll put that stuff up there as well, along with the bubonic plague stuff, because it's a good reference point to understand this stuff. So, looking at this website, the website is called Military Times. U.S. prepping for coronavirus pandemic. There was I saw it first, was alerted to this from Headlines with a Voice. She did a reading this article, and mentioned about how there was an executive order dealing with this kind of stuff, and it's been invoked by the military. I don't think it's been invoked like by President Trump, or it's been invoked by the military to prepare and set aside facilities to house quarantine. Now, first off, quarantine the military because they're out there and they're out in the area and they could get it. So there's obviously the application to them themselves. But see, I worry about the application of using quarantine, strategic infection enforcement quarantine to be used in areas that could affect the upcoming election, among other things. They can't get Trump out for some reason along the way here, and it looks like he's going to win. They got to try something. And this could be something that's being used. As far as I know, I don't peruse through mainstream media a lot. But for one, having a cursory kind of perusal, they've not been really covering this. So it looks to me like it's not really come to a point where it's going to be, but it's probably there in the background. Anything that can be used to scare people from the polls. Oh, if you go to the polls, you can get sick. I mean, because they want to keep the Trump people from the polls somehow. They're trying to taint the candidate himself, the president himself, to not be voted for. That's not working. They're trying to throw him out of the office so he can't run again, which I wonder if he could run again. That would be something. But the election coming up in November, you have to go through all of summer and down into November, so it's kind of hard to push that far because as we noted with the dates given with SARS, for example, by July it was gone. So this has a different kind of a launch pattern, but again, it's not like it is the Stephen King novel, because in that you had a 99.999 infection rate, and you had 7 days till death. And so in that fictional virus, you had the thing of having everybody die real quick before anybody could do anything about it, even find about it. Of course, it's fictional. In the fiction, you could say anything you want. But that's what I'm concerned about, is the reaction to the virus can be used for netherworld practices. Now, people have talked about biblical aspects and the pale horse and all this, which is all of the biblical references have the, I want to say, has the problem of having to be interpreted and applied. That's where the wild card is. That's where, and as you've known throughout history, if you've looked, Jesus has been coming several times already. You have talking about the latter days and the horses and the bulls have been seals been broken, the bulls been poured. No one really knows what it comes down to. I think probably in after looking backwards, one can see where it applies, but very hard to look forward, because the future, in my way of looking at it, this is my theology, the future is being created in real time. And especially now, what's happening is that it's so volatile now that anything could happen at any time, because the future is being created in real time. So a lot of things could take place. But rather than worried about it being a biological weapon to rid the earth of everything like that, I think the danger is not in the virus itself. The danger is in the reaction to the virus. And that, for myself, that has been the missing piece on the commentaries of it. People have been focusing on it, and it's growing exponentially, and that's been the focus of it. So it's kind of like the deer going across the road is the virus. I'm looking for the deer behind it that could actually cause a collision, and that's going to be the reaction to it. The last part of the reaction to it is shutting down commerce. Now, I work at a company that has a lot of access to shipping containers from Asia. Also, shipping them to Asia, shipping them to Europe. They're export and import. But one of the guys I know, friend I know, who used to work together in the same company, his company issued a paper saying, well, they've held 1 million, I think it's 1 million or 100,000, some large number, 1,100,000. I guess it's a big difference, but when it comes to shipping containers, maybe not. They've held them back from being delivered, shipped out, and there's actual loaded ships in China that's being held up and not being shipped out. Well, that could be hugely damaging to the world economy. A lot of business is done with China. Even in these days of trade wars, or what do you want to call it, the huge amount of commerce comes out of China, to China, but out of China in particular is what we're looking at being stopped. That could be devastating to an already weak trucking industry. If anybody is out there as a truck driver, they know things are down over other years, which, again, makes no sense to me with the numbers that they're saying in terms of increased workers and factories, but it is down. And if you then, right now we're in the Chinese New Year, which they shut everything down for a week or two. The government kind of decides this, we're going to have Chinese New Year at this time, and it's going to be for this many weeks or days. They've extended that, as far as I know, and have stopped these ships from coming out, according to this one source, which could be very devastating. And if things stop coming out of China, we're going to have the whole economy screech. Now, we're looking at this so-called Trump economy that's up, I forgot how many. It's up 70% or some ridiculous number. Stocks are so overvalued. They're like 70 times overvalued, which is totally ridiculous. Just watch the Shark Tank and ask them, watch them tongue lash anybody who overvalues their own stock and ask them to pay more for it. And then when you go out into the current stock market, it's in powers of 10 over that. So you already have a stock market that's way out there based on emotion, based on some kind of, I don't know. It's almost like everyone in there's taking like cocaine or something like from the 90s, where it's just supermen, right? We're going to Superman, Superwoman. We're going to, we're going to go to 100 overvalued. No, 200 overvalued. We can't do it. It's insanity. So all that's needed is some kind of precipitant. When water freezes, when it's water, it has to go slightly below 32 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit to get that bump needed to freeze. And the same thing we're melting. You ever notice when you get those little heaters? It's a liquid kind of a pouch that when you do a little clicker inside it, all of a sudden it solidifies and it's warm. That little clicker, it gives that little push to start an already ready and waiting physical reaction to change from the liquid into the salt and give off heat. Well, the stock market and the world economy is so overvalued that it's almost only looking for like a little bit of something nervous. And everybody who've made all this money through the stock market going up over these years is going to go like, well, I don't know, this China thing, they're starting to show up. I think it's time to sell. And so everyone sells at once, and then the whole thing crashes because it's all driven by computers. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with a movie. It was a John Wayne movie, and I'm trying to think of the name of it. He was on it was a circus movie. I don't think it was Circus World. It was a circus leader, and they were on a big ship. And it'll probably come to me. Anyway, so they're on the ship. They're going in. They're traveling around the world with the circus on their own ship with the animals and acrobatics and everything. And so they were showing off when they were in port. Had the acrobatic guys go walking on wires real high over the water. Well, one guy fell, and everybody on the ship ran to the side to look over to see what happened to him. And when all that weight shifted to one side, they started to list. And then what happened is the stuff inside the ship started to move over. And you have crates started to slide. And the whole ship turned over. Just because the people at top were randomly strewn about, all ran to one side. So all you need to do is have some precipitating event. Impeachment would have been one of them perhaps, but I guess people were so knew that he wasn't going to be impeached that it didn't have a real big effect. It worked the opposite in many ways. But now you have China shutting down their shipping, and somewhere along the line, somebody who's going to realize and go, well, it's been a world-class bull run. It's went longer than anyone in history, highest. It's been grand, but it's time for us to take some profits here and relax. All it takes is somebody seeing somebody doing it. Well, yeah, it's a good idea. I think I will too. And it all happens, and boom, the whole ship falls over. And these are the things I'm thinking of when it comes to disease. Disease is the last thing in my mind. The last thing I'm worried about is getting the disease, let alone dying from it. I mean, I'm not even concerned about it. It's the reaction to the disease is the killer. I mean, literally, as people are being, just about cemented in their houses and dying in China, as they plan, how can they possibly use this in terms of politically? I wouldn't put anything past the people in our government. After watching what they've done with Trump during all this stuff and how all these other people are walking away, McCabe and all these are just getting, obviously lying under oath, and that's okay. And Stone and these other people are being entrapped, and they're going, forever. It's all this stuff going on. All you have to do is go, we're running out of things to do. What can we do? Well, how about this virus? Yeah. So watch to see. If you start seeing the media getting all panicky about this, that's a red flag that they've gotten the memo to start pushing the virus thing. Now, there's nothing wrong with looking at it. I mean, Tucker has been looking at the virus thing. It is something to look at. It's very devastating for the people currently in China and Wuhan and those who are working through it. But it is, I'm going to say it's somewhat easy to prevent yourself from getting it, unless you're really in that susceptible range. You have an immune disease. You're a bubble boy, and there's a hole in your bubble tent. It's terrible, right? So, but for just the vast majority of the people, just common sense in cleaning and whatnot, maybe a little extra vitamin C for a while. It's probably that's something routine you do in the winter anyway. And other type of things. So it's to me it's not that big a deal. It's the reaction is the big deal, and that's what I wanted to get across here today to for people who listen and care what I say, to look past the initial deer running across the road, the virus, and look what's happening after it. I also want to stop and pause and thank Alice, who is a long-time listener. I mean, long meaning going back into the early 2000s. I would say 2004, 5. But she has been a strong supporter of the show throughout years. And she has actually signed up in Patreon, which is really nice for her to do it. I mean, she's been going through her own financial situation and stuff. So when she calls and writes, "Hey, I like what you do. I've been following you for years." She came in one time. I had a time when my job over at Fannie Mae Candies fell apart, and I was running on fumes, trying to put another work together. And all of a sudden, I get a huge donation, a one-time Christmas donation, which paid the more rent for that thing and got through the hump. So those kind of people are priceless, and I want to thank her for doing that. No one has to do it. I'm not trying to, you don't hear me push it or force it. But I've actually switched and downsized in what I'm doing, sold my truck, and I'm fine. I'm fine financially, unless no more container ships are come in anymore. That would be bad. But I am on a budget, and I is conscious of what it takes to put the show together. My time, for one, and the resources. And by her signing on, just took a huge dent out of what I'm doing. So I really want to take a moment to acknowledge what she's done and thank her very much. Alice, God bless you. And hang in there. I don't even know, these people come and go throughout my years. I've known they come in and out, and they've been there all along. They're just quietly listening in the background. And all of a sudden I'll get an email. I'm here from a year and a half, and I'll get an email saying, "Hey, I like what you said here," or Eric, encouragement or what have you. And it's very touching. Very nice. So I think I'm going to wind it up here. I said everything I needed to say. I will update. If you're looking at the chat room, you already got some links, but I will update this as it goes over to YouTube, and as it goes to BitChute. So spread this point. See what you think. There's always email. It's at feedtothefireradio@protonmail.com. That's how you can get in touch. On Gab, at the bottom of the description, it'll have all the ways that you could get in touch and so forth. And we will keep watch on this. And if you get any information, pro or con, or what I'm saying, please send it to me. I'll annotate the descriptions underneath to share the information, or just simply respond. I'd have a hold on the response because I have to go in and watch them for the knuckleheads that are out there. But, if anybody has anything critical to say, I let it go through as long as you're respectful, as you're not an idiot. I want criticism is always good to help find more toward the truth. I mean, that's our whole goal here anyway, is to find truth and reality. All right. We will see you next week. Live. Feet to the fire. Reach for the skies within.
Oh, my old friend, the one who walked before, the one who walked again, the ancient one of old, with wisdom for the new. Revive our inner sight, retell your timeless truths. Oh, ancient one. Hey!
Feet to Fire is a production of IPS Media Works on the OnSync Radio network of stations.
Did what I had to do, paid my dues. Shook this dust from my shoes, right there beside. I couldn't be denied. To myself I applied, and I wonder